Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the March meeting of the Delaware County Jail Oversight Board. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First, I'd like to announce that we did have an executive session yesterday to cover matters of personnel and public safety. And with that, we can move to the next item for today, which is our first round of public comment. As always, those who would like to address the board, please do so either now or at the end. The first round is for items that are specifically on our agenda for today. The last round of comment can be for matters that are just more broadly about the jail. And when addressing the board, please just start with your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Are there any members of the public who would like to address? All right, we'll move on to approval of the minutes for February. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Second.
We have a second. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. And we can move on to an approval of the February reports. Is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the reports.
Thank you, Ms. O'Malley. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any questions or comments on the reports? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right, we'll move on to our warden's report. Warden Williams.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, members of the board, as well as members of the public. Ramadan Mubarak to those who celebrate, as well as Happy Lent, as we are in the holy season right now, observing a number of different religious practices. And Sean will assist us in pulling up the report. Thank you. For monthly statistics, today's current population is 1,190 incarcerated persons. This is neither an increase nor a decrease from last month's meeting. Our weekender program, we had 18 participants within the month of February. 9 of those were first-timers and 4 were female. We had 518 commitments with 540 discharges. You can see recreation as listed for those that deviated from full block recreation in the month of February. And you can see that we have reasons that were indicated as well. The majority of those were not the population being fully locked in, but was tier recreation, meaning that we had 1/2 of the population out on the housing block at a time. For major incidences in the month of February, we had a death in custody that we need to report, and this occurred on February 24th of 2024. A 42-year-old African-American male who was a patient currently at Norristown State Hospital, while there was found to be unresponsive in bed. CPR and emergency protocols were initiated to include community emergency response to no avail. He was declared deceased at Norristown State Hospital in accordance with procedures of their protocols. This is under review with the Montgomery County Medical Examiner. That was the medical examiner that had jurisdiction. That's where Norristown State Hospital resides. But he was somebody who was in the legal custody of George W. Hill at time of his death. We had a full facility search also completed in the month of February. And for those that have been following along, this was something that actually occurred in the month of February in 2023 as well. For our statistics, and this is a point in time statistic review. So we had on the 1st of February, that's just something that we do every month to make sure that we're presenting the same snapshot of data at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So February 1, again, our population is predominantly unsentenced and the majority of those are male within our custody. In terms of our age population trends, we have not seen any change in the demographics in terms of those that are the highest population that we serve. That is still between the ages of 25 to 34 and African American. In a review of our new commitments, as we had reported earlier, we had 518 total commitments in the month of February. 108 of those were related to violations of probation or parole. 5 of those were state parole related. So it's not an additional 5, it's 5 of the 108. 43 were failure to appear only bench warrants, and 46 were violations of probation with new cases. You can see in the graph in the lower left quadrant, those are the lead commitment charges. And even though we've said this each month, I think it bears repeating. Individuals can come into custody for a variety of reasons, and many may have a multitude of charges. It is not one singular charge that brings them into custody. But we do evaluate the charges and the crimes coding of those. So the more severe charge is the one that we would identify as the lead charge. So those that you see listed within this graph, it is likely that they had more than one charge raised against them, but you can see the list of violent and or nonviolent offenses that led the number of commitments for the last calendar month. For our behavioral health statistics, we will continue to expand and allow for reporting with comparison from month to month. Our average daily population in February was 1,214, and you can see the breakdowns of the percentages of persons that are on medications. And so we are offering, those that are on at least one type of prescribed medication. So of our population of 1,214, 896 individuals were prescribed at least one medication. And I think it's important to identify that because there is a whole volume of work that is represented by our healthcare staff that are administering medications at minimum 2 times a day to the majority of the population. And a large volume of them do require at least one medication. Of those that are prescribed medications, 422 are prescribed a psychiatric medication. Again, they are prescribed at least one, accounting for 35% of the population. I wanted to make sure that while we're reporting, that we're saying where some of these numbers come from too, because data can say a lot of different things. So AMI stands for any mental illness, and that is any diagnosable condition within the DSM-5 TR, which is the text revision. And so any behavioral health diagnosis would be counted. We do not duplicate patient numbers within that, but many of our patients have more than one diagnosis. SMI stands for serious mental illness, and that is defined by specific diagnostic codes. And we've listed those to include major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, panic disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, and borderline personality disorder. And so these numbers are extremely important. It is something that the Department of Human Services is also looking at. It's important when we talk about the need versus funding, as well as staffing of the institution within the healthcare department specifically, to identify what additional services may be required and what the demands may be. So you can see any mental illness, it's nearly 60% of the population. Serious mental illness is nearly 30% of the population. For RTC, I hope next month that we'll have Dr. Melanie Cerrone, who is an employee of WellPath but works within our institution full-time. She is our psychologist within the RTC program. Will actually come and present to the board so that she can talk more specifically about the makeup of the program, progress, changes, evolution, and how that has been going. But we do presently have 3 fully enrolled patients. So we have a maximum census of 5, but 3 are presently fully enrolled. Some of that is because we had some individuals recently transferred to Norristown State Hospital that had been engaged in services in the jail-based program. And then we also had an individual who was fully restored within the RTC on-site program, which is what we were hopeful to see. So that person will not require a transport to Norristown State Hospital. Instead, they'll be able to progress through their legal proceedings without further delay. We are currently engaging 3 others that will be involved in the program to get our census number up to 5 as well. Medications for opioid use disorder. In comparison to our total population, 149 individuals of the 1,190, or 12.52%, are currently enrolled in at least one form of medication-assisted treatment. The majority of those are receiving a form of buprenorphine, either oral buprenorphine or Sublocade. We do have 13 individuals presently prescribed methadone, 0 prescribed naltrexone or Vivitrol. You can see in the graph as well, I'll do better to try and get the numbers to be larger in future slides, but we are trying to be very comprehensive in the data that we report as well as collect. So you can see all of the numbers for February. We did have 16 inductions in the last month. The majority of those served within the program in the last month have been continuations of services. For Aramark, we had a new food services manager begin in our agency. He's still undergoing orientation, though he's completed a majority of our classroom training to make sure that he's capable of working within our setting. We're still orienting him day to day with support from corporate level staff in Aramark, as well as on-site staff here as he's transitioning into his role. We do have a Department of Health inspection for our kitchen, which is scheduled on Thursday. They do have to conduct 2 within a calendar year. So the first one for 2024 will take place this week. Wanted to make sure we provided update on the Into Work program. And this is the job readiness certification program that Aramark has offered as part of their contract, in which there is both classroom and application learning to certify our incarcerated population to be serve safe. We plan to tentatively resume those services. It was on hiatus and we had a transition within our food services manager role. So we will be beginning that program again the week of March 18th. Just in case people aren't aware or familiar with ServSafe, it's a National Restaurant Association Education Foundation that supports a training and curriculum program to certify a person's understanding and compliance to ensure food and beverages are served safely. And ultimately, the mission and our goal locally at our agency is to run our kitchen as a true commercial kitchen. And certify the incarcerated population to increase employment skills for reintegration into the community. You may recall, based on Aramark's past presentation to the Jail Oversight Board, that they offer continued support when people are released and help with the assistance in actual job placement to get hired through this certification program. And while I don't have a specific slide for this, another one of our contracted services vendors, ViaPath, that provides the tablets, we had been short, that has, I think, also been reported by individuals during public comment, for tablets in the institution. And many of those were related to some supply issues and getting those into the building. I know that we were not the only correctional agency that was placing a demand on this vendor to produce those. We did receive approximately 600, which we were able to deploy between yesterday and today into the population, and that has increased our overall complement of 1,230 tablets within the facility, which gets us to an availability of 1-to-1 again, which is extremely important.
Or just to pause you there, because I think, as you mentioned, it has been a concern that we've heard repeatedly. It's great that we have sort of an immediate fix for the issue, but what do we do kind of overall going forward to ensure that there is a steady supply so that, we have a tablet for every inmate?
I think that accountability of procedure is one of the largest areas of opportunity to strengthen. So we depleted locally in our agency because of either damage to the tablets or those that just simply needed to be reserviced, not to the fault of anybody, but maybe the charging port was no longer working and that needed to be repaired or replaced by the vendor. I think with increased accountability as well as communication, which I know that Deputy Mistrodi works every single week with ViaPath to stay on top of these things, we should abate the issues and not deplete from the supply that we did so significantly in the past. I also think now that we've been able to get to full complement and there won't be a scarcity of resources. So just in human nature in general, when there's a scarcity of resources, we all kind of compete and fight for something that we should be able to provide. So with the full availability of the tablets within the institution, that behavior also goes down. So this was a very important first step for us, but staying on top of and maintaining those processes, reinforcing policy and procedure, retraining when needed, discussing openly with the population will be very important.
Thank you. Not at this moment. At the end, there's a round of public comment.
For our training academy, we hosted one graduation since the last Jail Oversight Board meeting, which occurred on the graduation occurred on February 16th, and we can see our very own Judge Amoroso from the Jail Oversight Board. She administered the oath for our officers. We greatly appreciate the participation from the judges. Truly, it is an important moment in their professional development and career to be able to be administered the oath for a correctional officer and to understand and be reminded of their duty that they are effectively sworn to discharge with fidelity. So it was wonderful having her present. It's not the first time that she's been there. We'll, of course, welcome her back anytime she wants to come for graduation. We did begin a class on February 5th that will graduate this Friday, March 15th. We began a class last Monday, and they will be scheduled to graduate on April 12th. We are currently recruiting for our next classes. We have two that are starting in April, one on the 1st and one on the 29th. For Employees of the Month, we have a number of individuals who are on this slide, and so I'll wait for us to highlight. We can see in the lower left-hand quadrant is our academic instructor, Ms. Kaspari. She is also viewed with her immediate supervisor, Workforce and Education Development Administrator, Joan Skursky, as well as Deputy Warden Valley. In the center at the bottom of the screen, you see our Substance Use and Mental Health Administrator, Pat O'Connor. She's on the far right, and she is with the individuals that she immediately supervises. So two substance use counselors, Mr. Burno, as well as Ms. Jones, and then we have Mr. Dickerson, who is our mental health coordinator. You also see attached to that picture her with Deputy Warden Valley. And then on the top right, we have Officer Sadiq. He was one of our correctional officers who was named Employee of the Month. And in the lower right hand, though she wasn't named Employee of the Month, it was important to highlight during our firearms qualification training, Officer Marshall was identified as one of our sharpshooters for having extreme accuracy while she was shooting at the range. And so we appreciate the efforts that everyone had submitted in terms of nominations, but mostly for the employees who demonstrated these efforts. And just to go back and revisit, Officer Sadiq went truly above and beyond an officer. So serving meals and making sure that everybody eats within the facility is extremely important. So we had a shortage where we didn't have dietary staff responding in the institution. And he recognized that that's an enormous issue and made sure that all of the incarcerated workers, as well as additional staff that were needed, were able to open, fully operate, prepare meals, and get those out to the population on time. Had he not taken that initiative, we might have had multiple disruptions within the agency and not been able to feed the population timely. That is not in any way one of the expectations that we have of our officer staff, but he did that not only without prompting, but came to his supervisory staff with an issue and a proposed solution that he was willing to enact. And I think that that's pretty incredible. Ms. Kaspari, who has been one of our academic instructors, has really joined the team with an incredible, enthusiastic attitude. Colleen Gilmartin, who is another academic instructor, and I know we've spoken about her in the last calendar month, and I know I may be stealing his thunder. He'll forgive me. But we had 17 individuals achieve a GED in the last calendar month. And that's the highest the facility has ever had in one calendar month, ever. And when you go to the GED celebrations with the individuals, so many of them speak unbelievably highly of their instructors who had a belief in them. And that belief gave them the motivation to continue to persist despite the challenges that faced them. Pat O'Connor is operating with a department that is half than it typically is. So I know it looks, there's only 3 right there, but she typically has 2 additional substance use counselors. But we have attrition rates that we are still working to address in the institution. In spite of that, while having less staff available to her, she actually expanded the volume of programming that's provided in the substance use. And so the courts are very familiar with PrEP 1, PrEP 2, but there are a number of services that her small but mighty group provides in the institution. And in the absence of having 2 additional staff, they were able to expand that to the maximum security population that didn't previously have those group services, and she was conducting those themselves. So I know each month we celebrate employees, and sometimes I say some things about them, but it is really important to acknowledge that while these persons were selected, there were a number that were additionally nominated, and these are the reasons why people are being acknowledged and recognized by peers or supervisors or subordinates that are recommending them for that additional recognition. So we're grateful for the opportunity to be able to highlight that. For cost recovery, these are the current to date, and we also included the prior year total just so you could have some comparison. Because we have discussed it in the past as well, we are starting to also include the interest of the Inmate Welfare Fund. So it is an interest-bearing account. We have verified that. And so you see in the lower rows, the interest income for the Inmate Welfare Fund. Capital improvements. So this is a separate agenda item on our actual agenda. So I can pause here if there's any comments, questions before we get into capital improvements, or I can just roll right into this as well.
Anything from board members?
Okay.
Great.
So for capital improvements, if you are following along with County Council too, lots of discussion related to the George W. Hill Correctional Facility and the need for investment in infrastructure and capital improvements. And sometimes timelines don't always match up. And I think the objective is to make sure that we are following all of the procurement processes within the county, that we are effectively communicating these in all of the public forums so that everybody has an idea of what's coming along, but also make sure that we're not stifling any progress that needs to happen at the institution. So the roof project was something that was identified and funded, or allocated, I should say, within the 2023 capital improvements budget, and it is still allocated and budgeted in 2024 capital improvement. In order to achieve this, it is being broken down into 2 separate phases. So this first phase is one that was recently discussed last week at County Council as well. A facility needs assessment was done for all roofing materials and HVAC units surveyed by qualified professionals outside of the institution. And while it has been identified that all of the roofs at the property of George W. Hill need to be addressed, the one that is in the most dire condition and needs a full replacement is known as the administration roof. Preliminary assessments of the roof projected the cost of a full replacement to be $2.3 million. And we worked collectively with Department of Public Works to seek bidders for this project. The full funding is coming from capital improvement. It is already allocated as we discussed, so this is not an additional ask or request of the county. It has already been forethought for this. On 1/16, there was a virtual pre-bid conference. On 1/17, we held an on-site meeting with the qualified bidders. The PLA, which is the professional labor agreement, and responsible contractor agreements were also submitted to all of the qualified bidders for their awareness that this would be expected in compliance. And Weatherproofing Technologies Incorporated, also known as WTI, was selected and provided a price quote that was approved by County Council on 3/6/24. And the total cost of replacement is $2,006,901.52, which is still a significant amount of money, but is less than was originally projected within the capital improvement budget. In phase two, Weatherproofing Technologies will be fully responsible for both phase one and phase two for oversight and management of the roofing project. And while completing the initial phase, they're going to be working to seek the advancement of phase two, which is not going to be a full replacing, it is a recoating, so repairing of the other roofs within the facility. We will need to replace all of the HVAC units. And the important part of that is that the lead time for the HVAC units is pretty significant. So that is, to my understanding, and I'm not an expert in this, one of the things that's still been impacted from pandemic supply chain demand issues that has extended lead times for these. We will still conduct future bids and assessments for the remaining roofs in concert with county procurement expectations, competitive bidding, and responsible awards. We're going to continue to partner with the Department of Public Works and make sure that we provide updates related to the roof, all projects, those ongoing and those future. In terms of other capital improvement projects, I know that we have spoken about this in past meetings as well, both at the Jail Oversight Board meeting and at County Council. So we have engaged BSI as our construction management firm, who will be responsible for the kitchen renovation project as well as the security systems project. The contract with BSI is still being finalized, and a tentative schedule for project planning and implementation will be presented in collaboration with Public Works. And so we will get that information out in terms of timelines, expectations. In concert with BSI, we're going to be having routine meetings in which we are making sure that we're efficiently, safely operating and managing the project, as well as, sticking to the budget and the timelines that are prescribed. So we'll have continuous ongoing updates in terms of those capital improvement investments. Another item that we do need to discuss and will need consideration from the Jail Oversight Board so that we could advance this to County Council is that we frequently, in the midst of needing all of these projects to take place, have to address repairs when they happen because they present life safety issues within the institution. So we had an emergency repair for the HVAC unit on 2, and when we have weekenders come in, that is the housing unit that they go to so that they are completely separate from the rest of the population. Elliott Lewis right now is a CoStarz vendor. We're in contract with them. They are the ones that come consistently to provide service to the HVAC units. We identified that, and by we, Elliott Lewis, the qualified contracted vendor, identified that there was a malfunction in the heat exchanger, which required a replacement of the parts, not the full unit. However, that part is extremely expensive because these units are advanced in age and the parts are not readily available. They have to be sourced. The estimate for the cost of the repair that was completed was a not to exceed $29,500. And so that is something too that we will have to, based on the expenditure, present to County Council for approval to come from our operating budget. And so that is for your consideration.
Thank you, Warden. So I guess for today, you'd like to seek the support of the Jail Oversight Board meeting and bringing that to County Council.
Yes, please.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve the support for the hiring of Elliott Lewis for the emergency repair of the HVAC unit on Unit 2?
Motion. Second.
We have a motion, a second. So questions and comments on this motion?
I just want to comment that when these things break, they have to be fixed. And so there's just a litany of things that we're that are breaking there because the work was never put into it for whatever reasons, but these were always responsibilities of the county and they remain that way. So I'm in favor of that. We need to do this work, and I would recommend the approval of this board for council's consideration.
Yeah, and look, I think just more generally, with the pace of projects now being tackled that have been in need of taking on for, in some cases, many years, there is going to be circumstances where this board may need to opine between meetings. We can't always wait for the monthly cadence of our meetings to occur in order to advance them to county council. So we will continue to have these updates, but understand that there may be items that come before us and we may just need to opine by email in between meetings, but we'll make sure that we discuss them in these monthly meetings. Anything else on this one in particular? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you very much. And that concludes my portion, though we do have the deputy warden's report. Are there any questions I may answer for the board at this time?
Any questions, board members?
All
Look,
right.
I would just say again, and it's a little bit of a continuation of what I said a moment ago, but with the number of projects that are going on, look, this has been a facility that has been underinvested in over the years. And these aren't projects, given the significance that you rush into. In some cases, they required some planning to ensure that they were done right. But this is a pretty significant development for the facility. In the capital plan, and remind me, I think it's the number I have in my head is it 40 million?
It is.
$40 million to be spent over the next few years. That, just for public's awareness, represents more spending on this facility than it occurred in the previous 25 years since it was built. So this is long overdue investment in our facility. And I think when we hear some of the challenges that get discussed, oftentimes they really stem from a lack of investment in the actual infrastructure, whether we're talking about, just a lot of the sort of elements of our infrastructure. So, I look forward to these monthly updates. I'm glad we have a project manager to help on the security front and on the kitchen front. But I like to see that we can continue to push these forward. Anything else from the board on capital improvements?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, this is great news, this investment in the facility. And I just want to, in advance, thank you and your staff at all levels and the incarcerated persons, because this is going to be working in a construction site for several years. And it's going to be challenging, and the logistics of all these projects in a space like that is going to be a little bit challenging. So as executive director, I want to help you in whatever way I can to provide the resources you need to continue to do the good work in that environment. And again, thanking all the staff that are going to have to work there as those projects go on.
You're here.
Thank you very much. I will bring up Deputy Warden Daley Valley for the Deputy Warden's report. And before I do, I won't steal thunder in introductions, but we do also have some guests that will be contributing to the report as well. So I just wanted to thank for their presence and support at this meeting, but more importantly, for the work that they do every day in the institution. Thank you.
Warden.
Thank you, Warden. Good evening, members of the council and those who are watching online. On the government. Thank you. So as you're aware, Ramadan began sunset on March 10 and will continue on April 9th. The incarcerated population has been advised by the facility posting physical documents, verbal communication, black rep, and electronic communication within the tablet. We presently have approximately 185 participants who have requested participate in Ramadan and has been medically clear to observe fast. We also have, as of Friday, 199 individuals who will participate in AID. The reason there's a difference is because so the one that haven't been medical care, they'll be able to participate because of their medical condition. Newly coming incarcerated who wishes to observe the fast during Ramadan will be medically assessed to determine the eligibility. We have received on Friday 204 donation card from our board member, Jonathan King, Ryan King, and Safe Corridor for the Muslim EAA cards for the population to send to the family. And thank you for your generosity, Mr. King. Just a reminder, last month, we spoke about our career fair for the incarcerated population on April 17th. The deadline for registration is on March 22nd. This event is in partnership with the PA Career Link, Delaware County Workforce. I see Ms. Kate here, and she'll talk more later, and EDSI and her team, thank you. So make sure you register before March 22nd, 2024. For more information, please reach out to Ms. Skruski from the jail or Mr. Michael Banidio from EDSI. As the warden stated, one of the biggest landmark accomplishments for our GED department is 17 IP received their GED. That's a lot in 1 month. And special shout out to Ms. Kaspari, Ms. Jill Martin, Ms. Skruski, and her team, and Ms. Kathy Miller for this accomplishment. We also receive referral sources and make partnership with Savage Sister. Savage Sister provides trauma-informed recovery house, harm reduction, and outreach services. It's going to be a intense service for our targeted population. I would like to welcome 2 additional case managers, Jason Collin and Aaron Dixon, who started on Monday. As you're aware, we are currently hiring. We are currently hiring. We're looking for additional case manager, 2 substance use counselor, a volunteer coordinator to assist our chaplain, and all the volunteer program, and a wellness instructor for wellness exercise. Feel free to visit our website. Before I pass it to Ms. Shaw, any question from the board? Michelle.
Say thanks to Mr. King. Thank you.
Oh,
for
you're welcome.
taking care of that. That was great.
Good evening, members of the board and the public. I will be sharing program and reentry updates. On Tuesday, March 5th, we officially kicked off the Delaware County Reentry Program. Currently, 6 participants are enrolled in the program. And if I may, that increased to 10 at 1 o'clock this afternoon. So I wanted to share that with everyone. DCRP collaborates with participants to provide extensive case management and comprehensive reentry plans. Reentry plans will address behavior health, physical health, recovery and family supports, housing, employment, vocational, educational, and other community supports. The voluntary service is opened to sentenced Delaware County residents, identified by the Office of the Public Defender and the Office of the District Attorney. Public Health Management Corporation is administering the service and will meet with clients weekly, 30 days pre-release, and continue engagement 60 days post-release. Partnership with Public Health Management Corporation is anticipated to serve 100 individuals over the next 3 years, supporting reintegration into the community. DCRP is funded through a Bureau Justice Assistance Grant. And it's important to acknowledge and thank the numerous Delaware County criminal justice agencies, Probation and Parole, District Attorney's Office, and Public Defender's Office for securing funding, which provides opportunity to best serve the incarcerated population, all with the common goal of lowering recidivism.
Just to pause you there, I mean, this is a great development. And again, this is another program that, you know, it has been some time in the making. But when we talk about reducing recidivism, helping folks who are leaving to get their feet under them, it's obviously critical to that goal. So I want to echo your thanks. I'm glad we have such great stakeholders who are taking an active role here, and certainly to your staff internally for what they're doing. This is a great development.
Absolutely. We've been fortunate to get help from the other agency.
So what exactly do they do?
It's extensive case management. They
What that is. That doesn't tell me.
discharge planning. They'll help them with resources to help them get a job, help them find housing,
Okay.
food assistance, any mental health issues, comprehensive, anything that will help them succeed upon getting released.
So they have a case manager that does that?
They do. It's
Each
an,
individual?
yes, it's an addition to our regular on-staff case management. Public Health Corporation has case managers that are going to add additional service to those enrolled in the program.
So they're gonna get them IDs.
Well, in-house, we're working on approval for IDs.
So oftentimes, and I usually use this parallel because it's something that many of us experience. You see buildings that have scaffolding, you know, as they're being worked on because there's supports that are needed for structure. So these case managers are providing this support as somebody reintegrates and navigates, because admittedly, most of us who may consider ourselves to be adjusted, functioning members of society, we struggle to navigate healthcare systems, the legal system, et cetera. And so these are persons who understand their circumstances, do a needs system assessment with them to determine what their needs truly are so that they can be successful in the community, reduce their risk of any barriers, and then they help facilitate that process. It could be assisting in navigating in achieving IDs. I do have, and I should have provided an update, but we don't have a fully executed contract. We did hear back from PennDOT officially. With the change in the governor, we can imagine that there's a number of different transitional items that needed to be addressed. And so PennDOT is one of our state programs that needed to go through that extensive review as well. So we do have an agreement, an intergovernment agency agreement, IGA, with PennDOT that is to us right now for consideration and for signature to make sure that we can execute the identification program, which would allow us predominantly through Kelly's leadership to help navigate in either getting a duplicate ID because one was lost, or issuing the first state identification for somebody while they are incarcerated. That would be paid for as supported by the Jail Oversight Board through the Inmate Welfare Fund, and the ID would be placed in their property prior to them leaving. Many people, I think that especially those that just participated in the reentry simulation exercise, I think that you were present, even though I wasn't. I was heard that we did have some board members, like Mr. King was present, you were present. Mr. Corson, I think you were involved, maybe MVP was, but you may not have been. But that we identify that that is one of the biggest predictors in recidivism, because the ID is everything. That's how we access everything. And that is, if that is one thing that we can achieve in reducing a barrier, it will have such a significant impact on our population. So PHMC is different in what they're going to be providing, while equally important in the success of those reintegrating. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. In conclusion, I will talk through a review of the First Step program. For new viewers to the JOB meeting, on July 1st, 2022, the Workforce Development Board of Delaware County was awarded a Department of Labor Pathway Home 3 grant. The grant is in partnership with EDSI to provide incarcerated adults with critical skill building and supportive services prior to and after release so they can successfully re-enter their communities and the labor force. And as the warden mentioned, we are extremely grateful to have Workforce Development Board Director Kate McGeever, EDSI Regional Director Laura Zales, EDSI First Step Program Manager Lauren Pearson, and EDSI Stephanie here this evening in support of the program. Ms. McGeever, Ms. Pearson, and Ms. Zales and their teams submitted the grant and administer the program. Their willingness to go above and beyond, as well as their commitment, support, and dedication to serving citizens has been monumental in developing, enhancing not only the First Step program, but also the program department at George W. Hill. In addition, both EDSI and the Workforce Development Board have been assisting with our upcoming job fair for the population. Thank you for your support and service. We officially began implementing the First Step program in October of 2022. Those enrolled in the program have worked one-on-one with a career coach to create individualized development plans, identifying SMART goals towards gaining and maintaining employment, as well as any transitional needs that they may have post-release, including but not limited to housing, food, mental health, recovery resources, and any other basic needs that may present as a barrier. 84% of participants received links to community resources. 5 clients have gained employment with a 33% retention rate. Mental health support was discussed with those that have not yet maintained employment to support them in maintaining work. 84% of participants have completed workshops pre-release. 70% of clients completed additional elective workshops or career acceleration programs. 40% of the clients have earned credentials in Flagger Force, forklift certification, and/or customer service certification. To date, 50 out of the 150 people, which is the grant capacity, have been successfully enrolled and completed the program. Our greatest challenge has been participant eligibility, which is participants must be sentenced and a Delaware County, Chester County, or Philadelphia County resident. Approximately 10% of our population is sentenced, and our average 2024 population is 1194 and was 1221 in 23. In addition, participants must be in general population for the efficiency and safety of group classes. In conclusion, we have a small pool, though we continue to create momentum and are committed to connecting services to those interested in gaining employment. The grant-determined recruitment ends on June 31st, 2024. June 31st is near, and we would like to apply for a 1-year at no cost extension of the grant. An additional year of recruitment should get us closer to our 150 enrollment goal. Before an extension is submitted, it's important to engage the members of the board. An official vote is not required. However, your input and support is paramount.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. I'll open it up to thoughts, questions on the program.
It doesn't cost anything. I don't know why we wouldn't do it, number one.
Right.
Number two, so what, look, besides connecting these people to services, okay, which then means they have to rely on that next person to do what they do. What, are we teaching them anything?
We are. If you reference the slide in the bottom right corner, you can,
Besides Flagger Force?
well, the bottom right corner, there's a sample of the calendar of what each cohort goes through. It's a 4-week session. They do resume writing, interviewing, they do career assessment, adult survey testing, budgeting, communication, stress management. It's very comprehensive, and they do all this skill building while they're incarcerated.
Okay, thank you.
I was just going to say, we could put Kate McGeever on the spot. If you want to, you're more than welcome to join us up here. But I think so this is separate than what I came and joined Kelly on before. So very, very specific in workforce development and getting individuals to have employable skills, as well as actually connected to employers in the community. But I would love for Ms. McGeever to speak about the program.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, board. So I'm Kate McGeever, Director of the county's Workforce Development Department. And just a little background, our department is federally funded, 100% federal funds. We apply for grants sometimes when we have identified either a gap or some innovation that we would like to pursue. But one of the limitations of our system is that we work outside of the walls. So we really do wait for individuals to come back into the community and then connect to our services. I can tell you, looking at our performance data over the last several years, the reentry community is the largest population of folks that we are serving. So we're absolutely there when people are ready for our services. But what I think is the most exciting about this opportunity, that I have to say, Laura Zales brought to me a couple of years ago and said, hey, here's this opportunity. My company is doing this in other areas. We'd like to try this here in George Hill. So I brought it to council. They said, sure, kind of free money. Why not? And so since then, they've been really kind of getting into the inside and creating a connection that we don't have as our traditional system. And the goal really is not to stop at, if we do get the 1-year extension, that's not the end of it. The idea is really, as individuals are coming back into the community, that's why we have those 3 counties in specific. EDSI is there providing our at-home services. So that individual will come, hopefully get some good skills, connect, but then Lauren will say, hey, when you get back into Chester, when you're back home, go and talk to my friend who also works for EDSI, and we'll get you connected to more services. So it's creating that bridge that we were not able to do with our traditional programming. So it's I want to say thank you so much to Laura and EDSI for identifying this as an opportunity. They did all the writing. We're working together on the administration, but they really identified that George Hill was in a great space with the changeover and deprivatization, and that this seemed like a wonderful time for Delaware County to take advantage. It was a $1.5 million grant. So it's no small amount of money. And we are looking forward to extending the work for an additional year. So with your support, we will make that request of the Department of Labor. And we also want to really say a huge thank you to the warden, deputy warden, and Ms. Shaw. They've been just so welcoming and really helpful as we're thinking through different strategies to make this a successful program. So
How
thank
many
you.
people, how many have participated in it?
All right, let's see. 50 so far.
And you said about identifying them, sentenced, I understand. That I understand, and the county limitation. What are the other limitations?
So the limitations truly are related to having a sentence, a county sentence, and so that population is extremely small. And then for us, it's also that they have to be within general population. So they can't be a maximum security because we can't
They
mix
wouldn't have-
populations
right.
within the
Okay.
facility. And they can't be subject to any disciplinary measures or any other separations. Again, because in order to facilitate most of the work that's done, and those that do the helping professions know, there are not enough helping profession persons available to do individualized services. The majority of services are rendered through group participation. So we have to be able to have a therapeutic cohort in participation within the walls to do that. So those are our limitations. They have to be in general population. That's the only additional stipulation that George W. Hill has provided. But the grant, the federal grant, requires that they be sentenced.
So if I've sentenced somebody to a county sentence, can I ask you to do it?
You are a judge, so you can ask us to do whatever you want.
I mean, I don't
And you
know if
can
there's
stipulate,
because
but if it is something that you feel we really should have to our awareness, so what I can say with confidence, even though I haven't verified it with them, is that between our records department and our programs department, any person who is sentenced, we do a full evaluation. And that is a shout out to the records department, because when they get those sentencing orders, they're truly looking at a full evaluation of what might be available for the person, because we know that we're going to be having them for an extended time period. And I hate to say that that's ideal, because it's not necessarily ideal, but when when somebody is going to be discharged, you know how much time you have in level of investment. And that's one of the predominant challenges in many correctional agencies, not just ours, that we don't know. They could be bonded out, their charges could be dismissed, they could be released. And so you don't know how much time you have with somebody. So many of the interventions tend to be very, very short to be as effective as possible. This intervention is so much more comprehensive. And Ms. McGeever, though I've not personally worked directly with the team, we hear it. We hear it in the population and how they speak about how they are treated, supported, engaged, what they learn, how they benefit from this, and how they gain a confidence when they are reentering the workforce. So to directly answer your question, as a judge, you can certainly put it on our radar. I can confidently state that the records department, the programs department are looking at everybody who is eligible and sometimes coming back time and time again to re-offer services, because one refusal is one refusal. But you might change your mind a month into your county sentence of, you know what? Now I have to accept my circumstances. I can't change the situation that I'm in. I don't want to make it worse. How might I make it better? And so I think the team is really good at not accepting no as a forever, but checking in to make sure that that is a permanent decision that they still want to make.
Mhm.
I had a question if I could. Excuse me, Your Honor.
No, that's good.
I wanted to know, first of all, thanks, Kate. Thank Laura. I worked with both of these fine young ladies. They have been doing a great job in the work that they do. I was blessed to work with both of them before. I wanted to just know, because I know about the timing on the grants and when you don't have the participants to get it done. This question is really to the warden. What do you think the obstacle could be? Of course, timing, because people get out and you just don't know. They're sentenced for 6 months and next thing you know, they're bailed out or whatever, right? What do you think the obstacle is of getting the numbers? Because it's like blowing me away about it, because I know a lot of people that are incarcerated need skills in order to be successful, out in the world. So is there anything that we can do, or I can do, right, with the kind of work that I do myself when we're talking about reentry to help to get that number where it should be?
I will say this, the power of choices and autonomy and individuality is something that, we want numbers to be higher than they are. So our population of sentenced persons is higher than the level of participation. And some of that rests with the individual's power of choice and autonomy. They don't have to accept the services that are being offered to them. And some people decline, and they have the right to do so. I think the impact that I have seen to be the most successful is what I just articulated, which is we respect and honors people's decision. Usually the power of influence, when other people see people engaged in program and they're speaking up their experiences and talking about their interactions, that can have a pretty profound impact on the population. When they start to trust that this person's here truly to help me, they have my best interest in mind, there's usually more of a willingness, not just for the incarcerated population, but any of us as human beings to participate and engage when we have people doing those direct referrals. But I think that the additional steps that are taken, which is re-offering of services, is pretty profound in getting people to reconsider or re-engage. Is there something that we could do? Probably. I don't know exactly what more. Perhaps it's doing a blast on the tablet. And now that we've increased the volume of tablets in the institution, perhaps that would be more effective than it was a couple of months ago, where we just remind people of services. But these individuals who are doing this through the grant fund are in our institution constantly. And Kelly is talking to people constantly. And so I think that while I want us to be at 150 by now, we're not. And maybe it's something that we could hear from experts like you who have firsthand knowledge within the reentry community, because that's what your organization focuses on, in ways that we can make it more palatable, or that people would trust or see the value in participating in this while they're in incarceration prior to them coming out. So I think there's probably, again, a lot of work that could be done, but really have to reinforce the amount of effort that is dedicated to get people to be engaged in these services.
Well, the reason I said it, and it's a two-part to this question, is because just me, myself, when I'm thinking about it, when we took over the jail, we talked about getting individuals help helping them to get skills so they can be better or have greater chances out in the world. And it's blowing me away. And I know when I see stuff like this, just from my experience, I know there's something missing that can be that lower fruit, right? And then when I'm thinking about the discipline stuff, like I know a guy can get a write-up and he could be a candidate last week, but he got into a fight or whatever the case may be, and then he might be written off. And I'm concerned about that. And there's rules, and I get it. One of those things that I'm concerned about, like when you have a great candidate and he's been good for 6 months and he gets one write-up and whatever that criteria is for him not to be able to be participating in a program, sometimes people get caught in between the mix of the cracks of it all. So my part to it is question is, how many write-ups a person have to get to be eliminated from the program? And if they do, does it really annihilate them from the possibility of getting that kind of help that they may need? Because being incarcerated can be a really tense thing, right? And we wake up with bad days. And I know as a warden, you can't analyze / look at every situation like that. It's impossible. But I just wanted to know what that looks like. And like I said, I'm here to lend a hand, not only as a board member, right, as a resident of this county and a former, right, resident of that prison. And how do we help them so they can have a greater opportunity?
So your question is wonderful because it allows for a clarification. Somebody who is on a current disciplinary status, meaning that they have been found to be guilty of a violation within the institution, while they are serving their disciplinary status, cannot be participating. But once they are released from that status, they can be, because there are no restrictions on whom they can be around in the institution. So your question specifically was, what's the number? There isn't one. These individuals, I can confidently state, don't judge anybody for the circumstances and what arrived, their arrival in the institution or their conduct within it. All they're looking at is whether or not they're presently eligible for placement within the program. And so those persons don't fall through the cracks. And if they were eligible, then we'll wait until they become eligible on the discipline status.
And we recently had two who who already served their disciplinary detention. As soon as they got out, we re-enrolled them. So we do keep our eye out. We're eager to see them out of disciplinary detention, and we enroll them right back in.
So I think particularly within this grant, the program support department and the mission of the facility overall is that jail is an accountability process, and we have accountability processes within the institution, but it is not meant to condemn or prohibit somebody's progress ever. And that we have a duty to serve the population to the best of our capacity. And so if somebody does something, we have an accountability process. And then when that accountability process is completed, then there they are again. And it's our duty to serve, protect the institution and Delaware County at large. And the best way that we can do that is to make sure that there are services continuously available.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, and I would love to add one of the benefits of, so this is a federal grant, and I think this is the 4th round that the Department of Labor has done. And so part of the requirement is that we have a technical advisor who is overseeing grants just like this in other places in the country. So we meet with the advisor, I think monthly at this point, just to hear what are good practices. So his experience was in Texas. So he was kind of sharing some practices that were successful in Texas. In about 6 weeks, the team is going to go down to Washington, D.C. to meet with other grantees from across the country to do exactly that. Like, think out of the box. What are some strategies? Bring them back to the George Hill team. Say, are these possible? Just to try to find opportunities to really be innovative and make the most out of this grant.
What is the name of the program?
It is,
Like, so if I have a 19-year-old defendant who I'm sentencing to 11 and a half to 23, because that, then encouraging him to participate, what is it?
First Step.
Ah, okay, first step.
We name everything steps, but this is the first
Works
step.
for me.
We have
What-
next step after that.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
I just want to say, I think it's great when we're seeing the departments, know each other and know what's available and work together, because really we learn so much from each other. And I know you've been doing this for a while, but there's really is a lot of education going on between departments and understanding everybody's business, and we're not in silos. So I think that's really valuable, and we have to just get the word out as much as we can wherever there's assistance from other departments. So I'm very supportive. I think.
No, and just want to highlight, when we started this process, a little over 5 years ago, how we would hear that stakeholders from the community weren't, kind of invited into the jail to participate, to provide services. So to see us bridging that gap and having stakeholders come out like EDSI worked with for years, that is an excellent partner to be able to provide these services and to collaborate, because the day somebody gets out to start resume building and job skills, we've already missed the mark. When we talk about recidivism, it needs to start inside the walls. So bringing these programs inside to get somebody comfortable, to get somebody signed up, to get somebody to go over that. So when they do get out, they can show right up at an EDSI or a participating provider and pick right up where they left off. That's so important. I think one of the things I want to give kudos to Mr. King and the event that he had last week is showing individuals that haven't been in the criminal justice system the additional barriers it is to complete or navigate things that we might think are simple, right? Getting IDs and getting signed up for programs without maybe transportation, without support, right? Navigating all that and showing up at the DMV and realizing they close on Mondays for some unknown reason, right? Like all those obstacles that are there and setbacks. And sometimes people that aren't in the criminal justice system really take that for granted. One thing that I really would like to see is the opportunity for these programs that we get is to see where we can build that model and where we can enhance it to open it up to the parole violators. Because when we see that recidivism, we see people that are constantly coming in 3 months, 6 months. And I know a lot of grants have restrictions, but I feel like, you guys are really building a model here. And if we can incorporate that and hopefully expand that, that is really would be an excellent opportunity when we talk about recidivism, because why is that person continuing to come back, right? Because they're not being, those skills aren't as readily available. So I think this seems like a great jumping off point to, talk about that.
Thank you. Also, the board's members are doing a lot so that we can make sure we get the true, accurate, and up-to-date information out there. So PHMC, which Ms. Shaw was talking about right before this grant, was supported by CJAB, and that was also through the Reentry Coalition of Delaware County, in which that grant was obtained. That actually we had in discussion specific to violations of probation and parole being open. And so that is not exclusionary criteria from the grant, whereas this grant is very specific. It can only be sentenced individuals. That one is not. And so the targeted audience for that grant is likely going to be open to everybody, but still really working towards those that are on probation and parole, who need those additional supports to make sure that they're navigating their obligations as well. So it's an excellent point, because recidivism is a very complex topic of conversation, and you can't look at recidivism in any isolated event. It's within the entire system, and the system opportunities for intervention are expansive and also limited. So we're trying to target all of those areas, and that is one grant that we hope to fill that gap.
Well, look, I want to just add my thanks to Ms. McGeever and to the team. This is really a great step forward. And, when we talk about reducing recidivism, there is no magic bullet, right? It's all of these programs that we're doing, these incremental steps we're taking to help that singular person get their feet under them. So excellent. And I think just given the nature of the questions, it sounds more like we're all thinking about how do we expand this, right? How do we make it more accessible to folks? How do we make it more inviting for someone who is eligible but has thus far declined? And I just had one thought on that topic, which is I wonder if now that you have some people who have successfully gone through the program, can you enlist them to be ambassadors for it? Is it possible that bringing folks to talk with people who are eligible and say, look, this was so good for me. You know, I've been in your shoes. It's worthwhile.
So the team actually wrote in that position into the grant. So I believe they're still in the process of finding the right candidate for it, but that's absolutely an opportunity
Awesome.
moving forward.
Awesome. All right.
I just want one last thing. I think we should get every federal dollar we can get or state dollar. And also that when we're on the cutting edge of these programs and we spend the next innovative idea, that might come to Delaware County as well. So it's really important to try and stay right in the front of the line with our hands up saying, please, we're ready to do this. So I just wanted to add that because we see that a lot on our grants.
Absolutely. I think we are looking for a motion today to support the seeking of a one-year extension on this grant. So if anyone would like to make that motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Your Honor.
A second.
You have a second. Any questions or comments before we vote on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? It is approved.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Moving on to any new business from board members. If not, we can move. Oh, sorry, Your
I don't
Honor.
know if this is actually new, but wouldn't I know that there had been a discussion about attorney and another attorney had brought up to me the issue of the availability of computers in order to share discovery with their clients. Do we have extra computers? Is there some way? They've approached saying, why can't we bring our computers in?
This is, sorry.
I don't even know what that was, but
Shelley.
okay. So do we have additional computers, and why are our private attorneys not being allowed to bring their computers in?
So our,
If I may, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Warden, before you begin, if I might, I would like to point out that this issue is the subject of litigation in Common Pleas Court in Delaware County. So it probably would not be a good idea for us to discuss it at this meeting because there are significant legal issues involved.
Oh, well, okay. Well, I guess somebody's bringing it to a head. It's not in front of me, so.
What I can say publicly, which is available in our policy, is that we do have 5 laptops available that allow for discovery to be viewed. I have yet to receive a single date when all 5 were in simultaneous use within the institution.
All right. Any other new business for today? Hearing none, we will move to that long promised second round of public comments. So if there's anyone from the public who would like to address the board today, now is your opportunity. Hearing none, we will move to any last board member comments for today. Anything else from the board?
A couple things. One, I wanted to mention an email that was shared about some great work again at the facility. This was an interesting story with someone who had a friend who was unaware of where they were in New York and was trying to track them down, and became aware that they had been arrested in Delaware County and had been looking to see if perhaps they were at George W. Hill. And Director Root and other staff there went out of their way to provide information and comfort to this family and this individual about where the location of this person was. So I can only imagine after days of having somebody missing in another state and not being sure where they were, what had happened to them, being able to have the comfort of at least knowing where they were and that they were safe must have been greatly appreciated. So I want to thank any of staff involved in that story. And again, I presume that's part of a culture there of helping people and going above and beyond. So glad to see that from staff. And I just also want to comment what great news about the tablets. As you know, as a newer board member, I did go out recently to tour the facility and talk both to staff and incarcerated persons. And it isn't just access to a tablet like any of us might think. It really is a lifeline to people. And it also is a safety and security issue for the entire facility. So to be able to have that good ratio and maintain that ratio is critical. And so glad to see that that is happening.
Thank you, Director O'Malley. Any other comments from board members? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned for today. Thank you all.